as the seasons change, so do our plant needs. So we took a trip to Carson's greenhouse, and he shared all of his tips on taking care of our indoor plants during the winter. Let's take a look.
All right, we're going to talk about 3 common problems that your houseplants are having at this time of year. Now, the first problem is called chlorosis, when the leaves are starting to get all this yellow mottling. Now, on some plants, it's natural and that happens, but on this particular pothos, this is because it's not too happy. Now, there's 3 things to check. Often you'll get that type of mottling when you're over or under watering. So first, check the soil. In this case, soil's pretty dry, which means it's not overwatered, and pothos by its nature doesn't really like a lot of water, so that's about right. The next thing to consider though is how much sunlight it's getting. At this time of year when there's lots of cloud cover and it's really gray, your plants aren't getting enough light and they start to look just like that. Chlorosis sets in. So there's a couple things you can do. The first, I love using a little bit of blood meal. Blood meal is high in nitrogen. Nitrogen helps in the photosynthesis process. It also adds to cell development, and it helps build the green in the leaves, which is what your leaves need to produce more energy. Secondary thing I like to do, I like to add a little artificial light. If you have a desk lamp, or you can put this closer to a brighter window, the plant will be happier. It's not a long-term thing, just until sunlight levels outside naturally get brighter. Second problem, when do you fertilize your plants? Now, this is really tricky because it's so dependent on the plant. This little money tree here looks fantastic, but what it's starting to do is it's sending up new growth. See, there's a new little leaf there. When your plants are sending up new growth, they're using extra energy. They need lots of energy to develop that new growth, which means it's time to fertilize your plants, and I love using a houseplant specific fertilizer. It's kind of like an all-purpose fertilizer. In this case, it's a synthetic, which means it's going to be absorbed quickly by the plant. I'm not consuming this plant, so I'm not as worried about it. The little fertilizer at this time of year, when it's going through new growth, will help it in the long run. And finally, and probably the most common, is the palm trees right now. Now, this is a beautiful palm variety, and I'm going to take this leaf off right here to show you what's going on. See that? Browning at the tips of the leaves. Very common for houseplants right now, and it has everything to do with the fact that our homes at this time of year are significantly drier. Not a lot of moisture in the air, especially if you have forced heating where the air is blowing out of your vents. Couple things to do. You can increase your watering a little bit. That's fine for the plant. More importantly, move it away from a vent. Do not let the wind blow on this. That nice warm breeze that we think is good for the plants are actually drying them out. The other thing you can consider is adding a humidifier to the bottom of the plant. Adding a little humidity into the room will stop this browning, but more importantly, it'll make the space feel a little nicer for you to live in at the same time.
Very cool. Okay, so we got them all prepped for winter. Let's get them ready for spring.
Right?
Right? So now it's time to make that transition and get them ready for spring. Do you love spring?
I do, and I do for different reasons.
Okay.
Spring is new life, new growth, all exciting. It's time to repot, to really refresh, which I love that part of it. That's exciting for me.
Beautiful.
So let's repot some plants today.
So let's do that.
Okay.
We've got to look at why they might need to be repotted and how to do it.
Right, so we're gonna start with orchids first, because at this time of year, everybody's like, why aren't my orchids blooming? What's going on? Like, we buy them and they look like this, and then we bring them home, and after a few months, they look like this.
All of them.
Right?
Every single one I've ever brought.
So we're gonna talk about what you should remove and what you shouldn't first of all. So the first thing that we are gonna remove is this spent flower stem. Now, if it's brittle and crunchy and it just snaps off, it's not coming back. This is dead. Dead is dead when it comes to plants. They don't revive these. So we're gonna take that off. All of these guys, though, are aerial rootlets. Now, orchids are epiphytes. I'm using all the big terms today. Epiphytes mean they grow in harmony with another organism, and in this case, orchids love to grow with trees. So these never touch the soil. They grow in the crotch of a tree where 2 branches come together, and these aerial rootlets are designed to absorb humidity and moisture. So this is how an orchid gets watered. But if all the rootlets are out here, it's not getting a lot of water unless you're misting it. So we're gonna actually transplant it. Now, there's no trick to this.
Oh, you just pull it out?
You just pull it out. And you're gonna see not a lot of roots in here.
Are those worms?
No, those are roots. Tracy Moore, I don't like worms. What are you doing? There's no real roots in here. You see this? There's nothing in there. It's just the moss, right? All of the root is up here.
Okay.
So when we repot this, we're going to put it in a pot that's a little bit deeper because that was too shallow. So we're going to go in this pot, a little deeper. You'll notice it doesn't have a hole in the bottom.
Right.
It does not matter for orchids. They don't care about water in the bottom, provided you're watering properly.
Okay.
The #1 way to kill an orchid, miswater it.
Is it overwatering
yeah,
it?
overwatering it or just not watering it at all, ignoring it completely. So I like to put all this back in. It has no purpose other than it's just filling the bottom of the pot. Okay, then I'm going to put in some bark. Now, orchids, because they're tree epiphytes, they like tree bark. So orchid bark that you purchase is actually just bark.
I've been doing it all wrong.
You could also use mulch. Yeah, anything that's not dyed, organic, absolutely use mulch in your orchid planters.
Got it.
Don't use soil. No soil ever for orchids. So we're going to put lots of that down in there.
Yeah.
Soil is bad. Soil rots it out. We're going to put it down, and we're going to put the aerial rootlets in a little bit here. We're going to tuck them in. They don't all have to go in, because it's going to naturally grow out anyways. But by tucking it in and then putting all the bark down in around it, we're going to secure it in place, which is how it wants to be. This is how it likes to be. It likes to be crowded in that pot. Then on top of that, we're going to put moss.
Nice.
Now the reason I like to put moss in is when you're watering your orchid, the moss holds more moisture than the wood chips. So you know when to water when the moss is dry. So now you know exactly when it's time to water your orchid by filling the moss. And you're going to water just the top surface. So you're going to splash water around the top to soak the moss. The orchid will now absorb all the moisture from the moss itself.
So smart.
Easy, so simple, and now it's happy and it's going to take off and do its own thing.
Beautiful.
So Tracy, let's talk about houseplants. And I've made a mess because you know that's what I like to do. Yeah, that's my favorite.
That's what the blanky's for.
Let's talk about houseplants.
Let's talk about houseplants.
All right, at this time of year, your houseplants are going through a bit of a metamorphosis.
Right.
This little aloe.
It's been a long winter.
It's had a rough
aloe?
season. So this aloe has died back because it hasn't had enough sunlight. Right? So it needs more sunlight in its life. And that's what's happening right now is we're starting to see more sun. The intensity's gone up. The aloe's starting to come back. And I'm going to pull this apart. I'm going to try and show this to the camera here. This is a little baby aloe shoot right there.
Yeah.
So when you see that, you know your plant's not dead. Even though it looks as bad as it does, it's not dead. So what you would do is we're going to just prune out all the dead stuff. We don't need anything dead because dead in plants is dead. It's not coming back. Exactly. Yeah. So we're going to prune that off. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to pull this out. It's wedged right in there. No mercy. Feel how tight it is?
I know.
That means it's really pot bound. So when it's pot bound, Tracy.
I'm always afraid I'm going to pull the plant right out without the roots.
When it's pot bound, Tracy.
Yes. Oh.
Yeah. There is times where you're going to have to smack it. Yeah, and this is one of those. So Tracy.
So bye-bye to the pot.
Can you crack that pot? Say goodbye.
Are you sure you want your hand there?
Yes, I do. Woo! Done. Perfect.
That was satisfying.
Yeah, right?
Yes.
So here's why it was so important to get it out of that pot.
Yeah.
There's a little a lower section on the pot that was locking the plant in, and it's completely wedged in there. All these roots are so jammed in. It's now starting to girdle, which means the roots are going round and round. It will eventually choke itself off. So we don't want that. So what we're going to do is we're just actually cut some of these roots.
Oh, you can do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Because when you prune the roots like this, it promotes new growth. So new growth is exactly what we want in spring because we have lots of sunlight.
Okay.
Now another pot that has a similar problem. Tracy, put your glasses back on. We're doing it again.
Okay.
You'll notice that this pot,
if we must,
very classic look. It's scalloped in tighter at the throat than actually down the sides. This pot is wedged. It is not.
That?
Yeah.
So you couldn't take it out no matter what.
There's no way to get it out. Exactly. And this plant keeps falling over because it's now growing sideways. So Tracy, crack a pot.
Ready?
Go for it. You got it.
I got it.
Nice in one shot.
Nice.
Perfect, yeah. So it's another good reason to pull this out.
I'm enjoying that too much. I'm going to go home and bust all my plants.
Fair enough. Now, you'll notice this one doesn't have the same root system.
Right.
It's not as intense. This is part of the succulent family. Succulents grow in deserts, kind of like the aloe, but in this case, very shallow rooted. It doesn't need a big pot. So if you're going to go up a size, you could go that big. It would be totally fine. Be happy in there. The soil, though, is so important. When we're choosing soil for your tropicals, I want you to go with a nice, light, fluffy tropical mix. This is not what you get in the backyard. There's no topsoil involved. A lot of perlite and vermiculite makes it light and fluffy. The reason you want this, it does a better job holding moisture. It is not wet and heavy. Very smart to use this stuff.
Got it. So get the right soil or it's not going to thrive.
Exactly.
As well.
And two other things to be paying attention to with your plants is if you've got roots coming out the bottom like this.
Oh, yeah.
You know you're getting close.
Hold
it's time to repot that. Absolutely see that big root coming out of there. You're going to take that one out. And finally, if your plant has warped the pot, it's like completely warped it. I'm gonna try and get this out of here.
Oh, nice.
Look at that. This guy needs a new home. He's got a lot in there.
He's thriving,
and
though,
there's
but he
babies.
needs more.
There's babies coming out the side.
Oh.
Yeah, so this is a guy that we need to repot as well. Now's the time to
bigger.
do it. Bigger pot for him.
Yeah.
We could even cut it up if we want to make extra babies for the guests and the neighbors.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah,
Share your
simple.
plans. That was so fun. What can I break now?
I'm afraid to ask.